Hi y'all, and welcome back to the garden. Today we're going to be reviewing the Luba 2 by 𝗟𝗂𝗂𝗲, which is an autonomous or robot mower that has helped me spend more time in the garden over the past month. Just a disclaimer before we get started, 𝗟𝗂𝗂𝗲 did send out this Luba 2 for me to test and trial, but I'm not receiving any compensation for this video because they wanted open and honest feedback. And so we're going to go over some tips and design that I think might make an improvement for some people, and also as well as some software features that I would like to see, as well as how the bot has performed over the past month. I have used it for 4 consecutive weeks, and other than a couple first times, which I'll explain, has performed flawlessly for me. We're not going to cover setup in this video because 𝗟𝗂𝗂𝗲 actually has an excellent setup video. I'll talk about the setup a little bit, and we'll go over the pieces of each thing, such as the RTK system and the dock. And then we're going to go over some tips that I've seen that if you decide to get this bot, it might be helpful for you, how it's performed, regular maintenance, and that type thing. So first things first, why might you want an autonomous robot to mow your lawn? If you know me, I have been the IT tech person in my family, friend circle, both at work and at home for years. I was an early investor in one of the first home automation systems on Kickstarter over 10 years ago, and I've been looking at robot mowers for several years. One, to cut down the time that I have to work outside so I can spend more time in the garden, but also to improve my lawn health. Now, until the past couple years ago, they were not a solution, in my opinion, for gardeners. And the reason is, previously they used to use this perimeter wire system. And so up until just a few years ago, you had to actually bury a wire in your lawn or just on top of the lawn. Most likely, better performance would be slightly under the lawn, like an invisible dog fence, and the robot would just kind of bounce around and follow that like an old style robot vacuum in your home. Over the past couple years, there have been significant improvements in how these bots operate. They have added sensors such as radar or LiDAR, but the most significant improvement recently has been a system known as RTK, and it is a GPS positioning system that uses an external device, which I'll show you here in a moment, that allows centimeter level accuracy and tracking and mowing your lawn. So the Luba 2 is really excellent because it uses several different sensors. It uses an RTK system, which gives it that centimeter level accuracy in mowing areas of your lawn. It also uses some radar sensors to detect obstacles, and it has a bumper to also help if it bumps into anything to stop it from going forward. But it also has a new camera system, which allows it to detect obstacles, avoid humans and pets, and navigate around those easily. So we're going to be testing those live on video this morning. The bot will shove off here in about 4 minutes and start its task of mowing the backyard this morning. And we're going to spend some time back there because it'll be a little more cooler in the shade. Now, you may not think it, but before I was a garden guy, I was a grass guy, and I spent a lot of time out in the lawn and doing a lot of things improving the lawn outside. And a bot like this will actually help improve the quality of your grass and your garden. So the more often you cut your lawn, the thicker it is, reduces weeds. And so if you're having a bot cut it, I'm doing like every 3 days in most areas, depending on how quickly the grass is growing, and that's working for mine. Depending on your lawn type, you may have to cut it less often or more often, and there are 8 different versions of this bot. So you have 4 that cut low grass, and the different versions are based on the size of your property you need to cut, and you have 4 that cut taller grass. Mine cuts 2.2 inches to 4 inches high, and since I have mostly tall fescue grass here in Southwest Ohio, I have set it at 3 inches. Now I typically cut about 3 1/4, but I found 3 inches works really good around the house where I'm going to be traversing the most, and it helps prevent the grass from being stepped on and weighed down as much and recover quicker as it is stepped on. So if you have dandelions or crabgrass in your lawn, because it's being cut twice a week maybe, you're not going to get those traveling into your garden beds over time, which will lead to a healthier garden and less weeds to pull. Now, 𝗟𝗂𝗂𝗲𝗲 sent me out the largest Luba, the one that will mow the most acreage, and right now that's 2.5 acres based on the battery sizing and design, and so that's about half of my property. And I went the other day to see how much I had mapped because I thought I had almost reached that 2.5 acres, and I had only reached about 1.5. And so I actually have almost maybe 3/4 of an acre left that I can go even further in my property. So we're gonna walk around this morning and show you some of how it's cutting and everything I've mapped as well. A couple weeks ago, I asked y'all for some comments, and you had several questions about how this bot operates. Some of those were how easy it was to set up and mow, and it can happen really quickly. They say the average setup time is 18 minutes. That's of course after you charge the bot, and I would say depending on your property size, you could probably get going in 18 minutes. You drive the robot around on your phone using 2 little joysticks on the app, and it will map the edge of the border for you, and then you just hit go and you choose which way you want to mow. And the number of mowing options is really incredible. So not only do you set the height of the deck, you can set the customizability of how you want to mow, which way you want the lines to go. Most often I've used the one that is most efficient. So they have a button that will basically map out what's most efficient for the bot to complete it most quickly. But the past week, since I wanted to test out some other features, I've been doing a checkerboard pattern, and you can actually pick the angle. So if you have an angle of your driveway that you want to line up, and you can preview the mow after you select the angle, you can go to the individual angles. So mine happened to be 17 degrees, and so it will cut 17 degrees based on how it's mapped all the way down, and then it'll turn a perpendicular, which you can also select that angle if you want it directly 90 degrees, or say you want 85 degrees. And then it'll mow all the way back the rest of the way to do like a double pass over your lawn. There are some questions about how long it can mow and the mowing width. So this bot has a deck of 15.7 inches, and it will mow about 3 hours on its first mow. After it finishes going down to 15% battery life, it heads back to the charger, recharges to 80%, which takes about an hour and 20 minutes I have found, and then it will start mowing again when it reaches 80%. So the second and third mow, depending on how big your property is, isn't going to be quite as long. I found that to be about 2 hours, but it allows you to get it done quicker. Now, one thing I would like to see in the app, and it may be something that because of the battery, saving the battery life over time is not an option, is I would like the ability for it to recharge to 100% before it completes the second mow. And that's simply because I have a large property, and so sometimes I have to do 3 and 4 mows to get the task completed because it's mowing over 1.5 acres, soon to be 2.5. And because it takes so long, it just adds to the mow time, and you could potentially cut out an entire charging cycle if there was an option to charge it to 100%. There was also some questions about hilly terrain or bumpy terrain, and the Luba actually has built-in shocks, which are really fun to watch operate. When I was driving around, I don't have the best terrain around here. This property was cut for a long time with a tractor, and especially on the edges near the agricultural fields, the terrain's really bumpy, and so you'll see the shocks working even going throughout the yard. As far as hills, it will go up to 38 degrees, and I don't have super hilly property. The closest I've got is close to the house, and I would say it's a pretty steep incline, and it has traversed those perfectly well as well. For my property, if I was cutting it with my tractor and my 0-turn, one person, it has taken us 4 hours over the past year since we've lived here to cut this property. Not having to cut the back half of the property, which is the most detailed around the house and around all the trees, will significantly cut down on that time. We've actually not had to cut the back half of the property in 6 weeks, and we've not cut the front half of the property either in that time, just to show you what the grass is looking like. Now, we have had some really dry weather, but it's been pretty wet here the past week or so as we've gotten some more rain. So you'll be able to see when I take you up front what the grass looks like that's been cut by the Luba versus uncut grass over a 6-week period of time. So it's 7:30 a.m. and the Luba, just like clockwork, starts off every morning doing a task depending on what time you set it on. So that's one thing that's interesting about the application. You can set multiple tasks to mow one or more areas that you define any time of the day, and because it uses an RTK system, you could even mow at night. Now note, the binocular vision system would not work at night because it's too dark, but you can do so using the GPS features. So let's go over the dock briefly. I have positioned it at the back of our barn, and I have hooked it up under the garage door to a plug in there. Now, 𝗟𝗡𝗀 Tech didn't send me out the garage, which is a separate accessory which protects the Luba from sun exposure over time, which if you live in a really hot climate can also help the battery recharge. If it gets too hot, then it will delay battery charging to protect the device. So just something to consider if you live in a warmer climate. But otherwise, the dock looks like this, and you can see the 2 charging points under there, and the Luba perfectly comes back and redocks itself when the battery reaches 15%, or when it's done with a task. Now let's take a look at where I've placed the RTK system, which helps the Luba navigate to centimeter level precision. You can put the RTK system with the dock, but the RTK system needs to have open view of the sky. If it can't receive a good GPS signal, the Luba will fail its task. And so the first task that I made with the Luba did not complete successfully, and I had it positioned over here next to the barn, and so that was my user error. That was a learning experience. So that's the tip I want to give you, is initially you should set the Luba up. You can put the dock anywhere. It does come with 2 charging adapters. I would recommend putting the RTK system in open view. Now they do have a wall mount accessory for it, and they also have a solar panel accessory for it. So if you need to put it out on your property somewhere to get an open view of the sky, or if you don't have an outlet near, that is an option. I have chose to put the RTK system on the back of our deck for now. I do have a wall mounting option, but I'm not installed it yet. One thing about the RTK system is it needs to be permanently placed. You cannot move it after installation, or you will have to remap your entire property, because it is based on where it's positioned to the property, and it tells the Luba mathematically where it needs to go. If you move this, then it would no longer be accurate, and that's why they protect the system, and it would automatically give you a pop-up saying that the thing's moved and that you have to remap. Now what's nice though is you can move the charging dock, and I've actually moved the charging dock twice to reposition it. Because the Luba uses this primarily to navigate, the charging dock can be anywhere. So if you fail to position the charging dock in a great location the first time, it'll actually detect that the charging dock was moved, and it'll ask you if you want to move it. And then all you have to do is put the Luba back on the charging dock to charge, and there's an option in the preferences to select Move Charging Dock, and then it'll go back to that same space every time. So I told you the first 2 tasks that I created with the Luba failed, and the first one was because it was not receiving a good GPS signal because I did not position the RTK system accurately. The second time was because I created a new task here in this pool area, and I did not create a channel for the robot to navigate back to the task area behind the barn. And so that's the only reason it didn't complete that task. After I created a channel, channel is basically an area between 2 mowing tasks that don't overlap, so the robot knows to go through the channel exactly. So if you have a small area next to your house that maybe has gravel between your front and backyards, you would create a channel so the Luba knows how to navigate to the area in front of your yard maybe. That allows it to do all those things without running and bumping into anything, and to navigate based on how you want it to navigate. So when you set up a Luba to mow, you have all of these options. It's really incredible the number of fine detail you can get into how you want it to mow, which I mentioned. And I typically tell it to mow the perimeter first, and I do 2 laps. I found that to be most efficient for my property. You may need to only do 1 lap depending on where you are, and you can also choose 0 turn or multi-point turn. This is an all-wheel drive system, and so it can turn on a dime using its 4 motors and the wheels. But if you have wetter soil, like I have clay soil, sometimes just like a 0 turn mower, that could damage the grass. I also have some areas in the lawn that are not the best with grass cover right now because there's been a lot of work out here. And I don't want it to get more muddy by doing a 0 point turn. So I found multi-point turns to be really efficient for me. So let's take a look at the grass, shall we? You can see where the Luba has been positioned to mow, and you can see it navigating around these mulch piles. I used up a bunch of mulch this past couple weeks, extending some flower beds, which has been really nice. But you can see how much the grass has grown in areas it has not traversed. So let's get down here low. And this is my burn pile with a lot of things on it that are broken and dead. And you can see exactly where the Luba traverses every time it mows this back area. So I sat with the remote and walked around and mapped this whole area. Now you can also create no-go zones. So if you have a tree or a shrub or some other thing, I'll show you my map right quick of what this looks like. You basically map out your area, and then you also map out your no-go zones using the manual control of the Luba, and then the robot just avoids it. And you can tell even the mowing directions to go around that area twice, so it's getting the edges really well. But you can see it just navigates kind of perfectly. Now it does go around the perimeter kind of slow based on how you originally mapped it. What I would recommend you do is spend 45 minutes to an hour with this device before you start actually mapping it, just to get a handle of the controls. Because if you're going around fine details, like I'm creating some really complicated edges here around all of this mulch bed and everything, the slower you are and the more twists and turns you make, it kind of ends up with a slower Luba traversing the perimeter. So after the first one, it does a better job around the second lap because it's not having to get as close to the edges that you defined. But the better you are at mapping the area initially, the quicker it will kind of do those perimeter laps. So we're going to get behind the Luba here so you can hear it, but you can also see the shocks working and kind of see how loud it is. It is maybe a little louder than a dishwasher depending on the height of your grass. You can see this grass that it's mowing through right here. It's gotten a little tall. And you can also see how dirty the Luba is. Now, I have not cleaned this off. I considered cleaning it for this video, but this is realistically how it's gonna look if you're mowing regularly with it. It is white. I think the design choice for that was to preserve the battery life and reduce the amount of heat that it's absorbing from the sun, but it's just gonna get dirty. That's what it does. Now, there's not really a recommendation for it to mow during rain, and it actually has 2 contact rain sensors on the top. So if it starts raining, it will detect that it's raining, it will go back to the dock to charge, and then it will ask you when you think the grass is dry enough to continue the task. So let's talk about build quality. When it arrived, the FedEx said it was about 46 pounds for the entire box. That included the robot and the RTK system. And the dock and everything. But the mower itself is pretty hefty. It has 4 all-wheel drive motors along the wheels, a big battery so it can mow all this time. And it's hard to impress me with IT tech sometimes, and I was honestly impressed with the heft of this robot and how well it seemed built. Assembly is really easy. There's 2 pieces you really have to put together. The front bumper that protects from obstacles, which you can either use based on its sensors, and even in the app you can tell it whether you want it not to touch anything, light touch, less touch. And so if it comes against an obstacle, it will navigate those obstacles based on how you tell it. The second item is the vision system that allows it to avoid obstacles visually, like humans and pets. And that screws in, you pop the little connector together and it screws in 4 little screws. There is the capability to add a 4G SIM card, and it does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So if you don't have great Wi-Fi outside, or you want to track the robot outside of your mowing area around where you have Wi-Fi, you can insert a 4G SIM card and it will use data and transmit that data to the app for you. I happen to have Wi-Fi both inside and outside of my house because I'm a YouTuber and I might need that to do any YouTube lives. And so you can actually visually see with the camera it mowing your lawn through the system in a first-person view. And that's just a really neat feature. I've found myself inside just watching the camera. It probably reduces the battery life and I shouldn't be doing that, but it's just fun to watch it traverse your landscape from the ground height, and you can see the garden and all sorts of other things while it's doing that. So let's go up front right quick and show you how it's cutting the rest of the property, and then we'll come back and I want to test the obstacle avoidance and the vision features in real time on this video for you. So this area hasn't been mowed in a couple days, and you can see the grass growing up, but you can also see how tall these weeds are, which this is technically grass, but I didn't want to get super close to the soybeans, how tall that grass would have been had it not been mowed with the Luba on a regular basis. So the driveway here would have been the perfect place to put a channel if it wasn't connected to another area. So because I'm cutting all the way around the house, this is an area over here which connects all the way back behind the barn, and this is a separate area. So the Luba, there could be a channel here, but you don't need one if two mowing areas overlap. And so the Luba, if it's in the middle of cutting this, and it decides it needs to go back to the charger because it's too low, the battery's too low, it'll navigate all the way around the house through the other mowing zones to the charging dock. Now this week I focused on doing the checkerboard pattern on this front lawn area. So you can see here where I'm about mowing to, and I'm hoping I can get all the way to the front of these crab apples over the next week when I map additional zones. But you can see here kind of the delineation of where the Luba has been mowing, and because you're controlling the robot, the lines between any area are only as straight as you make them, and mine are a little curvy here, not perfectly straight all the way across, but it does cut to the end of the property line. And if we lower the camera a little bit, maybe you can see the mowing lines through here. It may be kind of hard this time of the day, and because it's been a couple days since this area of the lawn was cut, but it's done a really nice job around all of the areas. So everywhere you see a tree, that is a no-go line. It will avoid obstacles, small obstacles, but big obstacles like this, you basically need to tell it that it shouldn't go around this tree into the mulch area, which is very easy to do. So I have all of the trees mapped out where there are mulch there, and we'll just keep walking around the property here so you can see how well it is cutting everything. Now I have it navigating very precisely around this tree here. These are some branches that we need to come through and cut down and limb up so we can get under them a little better, and so there's not poison ivy or poison oak growing under here, but it's navigating around the branches really well. And I'm really satisfied with the cut quality. It's also nice not to come out here every week and mow the lawn for 4 hours. Now after you have set up an area, you can easily go in and modify the edges of this area. And so that's one of the reasons that for a gardener, this is a really good mower system. Those that have RTK systems, because of previously a few years ago, it's one of the reasons I decided against a robot mower, because if you want to expand your flower beds or create a new flower bed, you basically had to install and modify the wire in the ground. Now I can go into the app and you literally set the Luba down along the edge that you already created. Then you tell it you want to modify the area map, and you drive around the edge that you want to be new, and it will remap that just specific section of the map. I've done this multiple times. You know, if you've been following me the past month, I have redid the hydrangea bed, re-edged it, had to create and modify the map there, and I created this new bed on the outside of the fence, and so I had to modify the edge of the map there. I had mulch delivered for the flower bed behind me here, and so I had to come in and modify the map around that area of mulch so it wouldn't be trying to mow into that mulch. So those are the features that I find really helpful as a gardener, just to come out here and modify the map really quickly. You know, in the few weeks I'm going to be creating a new bed right here. I'll come out here and create this as a no-go zone, so it will come out and it will not mow that area between the trees because there'll be mulch there. And I won't have to remap the area, the complete area, as a result. I'll give the Luba a little bit of time to finish its second perimeter mow, and then I will test the obstacle avoidance when it's in the middle of doing lines back and forth, because when it detects you in those instances, it turns around and goes the opposite way, which is a nice feature as well. So let's talk about some features, software features I'd like to see improved in the app. The mowing options when you start a mow, a manual mow, or if you're scheduling a mow, I think the screen could be improved there slightly. There are a lot of white on that page, and I think it could be color-coded based on sections. There's some kind of integrated drop-down dialogues, but I love the customizability of the options that are available. I wish that the tasks displayed in a calendar view. So right now you can create multiple tasks, and so I have a task of cutting these two areas behind me here, this one and the one over there, and then I have some tasks to cut the front of the barn next to where the driveway is, and then I need to create some tasks to cut the front of the yard. I wish those were shown on a calendar and it was easy to go in through and say skip a mow, because right now to skip something that you scheduled, you basically have to disable it and then re-enable it later. One thing I think that could be an interesting improvement is right now when you schedule a task, it shows you how many minutes it will take to complete that task. I wish it would just show the number of hours and minutes. Right now it'll say like 300 and something minutes. Well, you got to do the math in your head to realize how long that's going to be, but also it doesn't calculate into that charging time. So I wish it would, based on how the battery and its efficiency and it knows how long it takes to charge itself, it would calculate that into account and give you a better estimate of when the job will be completed, not just the time that it will take to mow outside of charging. I wish you could set a duration for the mower to automatically resume after rain. Right now, it will go back to the dock, and I've not been patient enough to wait and see if it will pick up that task later. I usually have to hit continue, but I wish if it was a sunny day, maybe you could tell it to resume the task 5 hours later. By then, the grass probably dried out enough where you could mow it, and because it's so lightweight, it wouldn't damage the grass. So that's just a wish list in the app. Something else that I'm not sure why it operates the way it does is I can't edit a task while it's mowing. So if right now it's mowing, I could not go in here and create a new task up front. I would have to wait until it finished this mow, which with a property as big as mine, it's kind of not great to have to wait and edit those tasks or remember to do it later in the day after the task completes. So just the ability to edit tasks while it's mowing would be nice. So I really like the ability to see a preview of the mow after you select all the options, but it would be nice to be able to adjust the lines directly in the preview. So right now there's two screens. I'll show it on the screen. You select all your options, then you can hit preview, and you have to wait for that preview to build. There's a lot of calculations that are involved in doing a build out of something like that. So it's basically detecting what the entire mow would look like. But it'd be nice to be able to adjust the angle of the mow directly in the map. That way you don't have to go back and hit preview again and wait for it to load. That's just something I think that would be nice and user-friendly. I also think maybe it's possible that you should be able to draw your finger along the map and just tell the robot and the app which way you want the lines to be and which way you want it to mow. I also wish there was an alternate mow. I've used the most efficient method usually to cut the lawn, other than experimenting this week with a checkerboard pattern. I wish there was two efficiency modes, one that is the most efficient and one that's maybe not the most efficient, but it is the second most efficient that will make the lines match evenly between the sections. That would be really nice. So all of these things, because they're not hardware related, I think are really easy to improve on over time. So I'll look forward to MeMotion doing some interesting things in scheduling. This is the second iteration of their Luba, so they're learning from their customer base just like everyone else. And because they're sending these devices out to people like me, they want honest feedback on the experience. And those are some things that I think would improve the user's experience easily. Now let's talk about managing expectations. So this is a mower I've mentioned several times that you're probably going to have to mow your grass twice a week with it. This is not a mower that's going to cut through 1 foot tall grass easily and it look good. It works with spinning razor blades essentially on the bottom, and you're supposed to replace these razor blades about every 50 hours of cutting time. Now for me, that's not necessarily reasonable given the size of my property, and so I have not replaced the razor blades yet, and it's still cutting really well. You can go through and flip them after so many times and get a second use out of them and then replace them, but coming along a month of use, it is still cutting well for me using those same razor blades, and I'm going to be probably flipping them over here soon just so it continue creating a good mow for me. Now you'll still have to edge the grass with your weed eater or a string trimmer, as a lot of people call it. That's not something that the Luba can handle for you, but the map is also as good as you make it. So I have spent a lot of time over the past month making my beds where I won't have to string trim around them. The Luba, because the way my mulch sits, will sit up directly on the bed just a little bit, and it will navigate around it and cut the edge of that bed for me. And if you decide to get a mower like this, there's a lot of things like that you can do around your garden and around your yard so you can reduce your likelihood of having to string trim at any given time. Now, Motion Tech also has another robot mower out there called the 𝗟𝗂𝗲, and it is a new one to the market this year, and it actually will collect the debris from the grass that you're cutting. The Luba 2 essentially is mulch mowing. It's cutting it off, and if you do it enough times a week, it will obviously reduce the amount of thatch in your lawn because it's cutting tiny, tiny slivers rather than big pieces of grass. But the 𝗟𝗂𝗲 is interesting because it will collect all of that debris for you, and then it will go dump it somewhere where you designate on your property, and you could add that to your compost if you wanted to, and let it break down and add it back to your garden. That's not one that I have tried, obviously, but it seems like a really interesting unit that might fit someone's needs. So the Luba has finished its perimeter mows. You can see this is an odd shaped area that I've got mapped out here. So over the coming months, I'm going to come through and I'm going to place the RTK system, actually using its wall mount, probably down on the side of the deck there. But that means I will need to remap my entire lawn. And I've learned something over this process of how I would better like to map the systems. And so I'm probably going to do just directly behind the barn and this be an entire area itself. Right now, when I was testing it, I just kind of made this odd little loop here around the swing set. So the Luba's in its zigzag cycle. We're going to test some of its more obstacle avoidance features here. Sometimes it will turn around, sometimes it will not. Sometimes it will just navigate around me, and you can see it's doing that now. Now let's show you what happens if it bumps into an obstacle. And we'll just trigger the bumps as the bumper right now. It immediately cuts the blades off, and when it detects that it's around the obstacle or the obstacle is no longer an issue, it will re-trigger them. Now you can hit stop on it at any time, and it will stop the system from mowing if you need to get under it. Also on top, you'll see the 3 ultrasonic sensors here, the vision system, and then there's some buttons on top where if you just want to start it to mow without using the app, you can do that. You can also tell it to go home, or you can power it down. Now let's take a look up under the Luba so you can see the mowing system. So you can see it has 2 spinning discs. I've washed out the mower deck because it had a little bit of grass stuck in there to mow more efficiently, but you can also see the blades. So the blades, as I mentioned, are reversible, so you unscrew those little Phillips head screws there and flip them around, and so they will mow better for you over another duration, and then you replace the blades after that second use. Up until this past week, I had been checking underneath the device regularly, and there was no grass underneath the deck. Now, it has rained some this week, and the humidity has been super high, and the mowing, the grass is a little wet, so that's why it's got some grass under it. That's another thing about the scheduling. It'd be nice if there was just a delay feature. Say it's super humid one morning and I come out, head to work, and notice that the grass is really wet. I wish there was just like a delay for 4 hours, delay for 2 hours. Just a quick option to help assist things like that not to happen. So overall, I think this is a really well-built robot. Now, one thing that I would change in the design, and I'm going to mention it because I think it might be important for some people. The Luba will traverse over small sticks. If you have big sticks in your yard, then that could be an issue. So under trees, you just need to keep aware of those. But these wheels are, I love them. They're really nicely designed, but because the way they are designed, they seem to channel sticks under here and then get trapped here, which I've had not happen on any mowing conditions, but because I've used wood chip mulch, and this may just be something I experienced because of the way I garden, there's some sticks in that mulch, And I've had it when I'm going across the edge that these wheels will kick up a stick and jam it here, and then I have to correct that edge. So I think this guard here, which exists to protect the side of the robot and navigate around low obstacles, you can see it's kind of scuffed up from how closely I'm navigating the Luba around things in my yard. I think it could be wrapped underneath maybe to protect a little bit more of the undercarriage of the robot, so that when sticks maybe come through there, that they just continue to glide past it. I don't know, it's not a huge deal. I've not experienced any failed mows because of it, but I think it's something that maybe could be improved on in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this review of the Luba 2. I know it has saved me countless hours of time, essentially a 40-hour work week just the past month that I've had it. And I hope you'll give it a chance or consider robot mowers going in the future. I think this is a really exceptional one for the amount of customizability that it provides. I'll continue to show the Luba 2 in videos. You may have noticed it the past few weeks mowing while I've been shooting some other content, garden-related content. It will continue mowing for me, and we'll continue to evaluate it over the coming months and years and see how well it performs as it's used more over time. Thank y'all for joining me for this video, and remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.